we're really in for a treat now. As Louise Livingstone, who's one of the founders of the Awakening Heart Collective and a co-host today, will be sharing her story and her insights. And what a story she has. Louise's heart has led her on quite a journey in the last few decades, from a place of serious ill health through times of despair and then deep personal and academic learning. She's reached a point now where she's able to bring her knowledge and wisdom about the heart to the world through her wonderful courses and teachings. As you will already know from seeing her on screen this morning, Louise has a gentle manner and a lovely way with words, and I know listening to her will not only be a fascinating experience, but also one that feels comforting and nurturing. During this session, Louise will be providing information, but also allowing us a direct experience of our own hearts. So now I invite you to sit back, relax, and absorb the heartwarming energies that Louise has to offer.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Liz. Hello, everyone. Well, welcome. I'm really delighted to be with you all here this afternoon. And I just wanted to say a little bit about me. I'm director of the Heart Sense Research Institute, and that's an organisation that supports people to reconnect to their own heart's voice, wisdom and knowing, helping them to learn to experience themselves as deeply embedded in the unfolding story of the universe. So really sinking into Tim's words there and everything that he was talking about this morning. So Heart Sense is an approach towards life that my heart gifted me during my doctorate, as I learnt to reconnect with my heart, have conversations with my heart, and create the possibility to hear my heart's wisdom. And I'll speak more about this in more detail shortly. But just to say that I gained my doctorate from Canterbury Christ Church University in 2019. And during my research, I was based in the Faculty of Education in the field of transformative learning. And my thesis title was, How can the thought of the heart offer effective ways of engaging with conflict? An imaginal and reflexive study. So the work itself, I was very lucky to be able to find a supervisor and a university and a faculty that could even hold the concept of somebody wanting to research speaking to their heart over 5 years. But my work was inspired by a lifetime of cardiac illness, numerous near-death experiences, and a revelatory numinous experience that I had with my heart in the mid-2000s during a lengthy episode of cardiac arrhythmias when my heart spoke to me. And this event led me to explore the possibility of bringing conflicting dimensions of myself together as part of a transformative journey undertook through the guidance of my own heart. And in the case of my research, my heart, both physically and symbolically, was the uniting principle. So my research was transdisciplinary. I explored discourses including conflict resolution, transformational learning, depth psychology, religious philosophy, esoteric philosophy, cultural history, and holistic science. And as part of my PhD, I had the pleasure of teaching on the MA Myth, Cosmology and the Sacred that ran at Canterbury Christ Church University until 2021. And I worked as the personal academic tutor on the programme. So in addition to my directorship of the Heart Sense Research Institute, I'm now co-director for the Centre of Myth, Cosmology and the Sacred, which is an independent learning organisation seeded from the MA Myth, Cosmology and the Sacred, which seeks to bring transformational learning methodologies and frameworks, which are expanded ways of being and knowing in the world, to help us in a kind of starved, I would say, Western contemporary framework of the way that we are encouraged to view the world. We look at expanding our perception of the world, to allow more of the world in as it speaks to us in all of its complexity. And that's what I found the beauty of the heart is. It allows us to reach into those places. And I'll give you, I'll hopefully take you into a contemplative experiential exercise shortly. So in today's session, I'm inviting you really to commit to opening your heart, your mind, your whole body to a different experience of your heart, and to make space for inspiration, for deeper meaning to arise in those deeper expanded places. So what we're doing is opening to the possibility that we all find our own pathways towards realms that lie beyond our generally accepted ways of making sense of the world, beyond modern day-to-day modes of awareness. And so what we'll be doing is creating the possibility for your heart to speak to you in your heart's way, and inviting you to move towards what your heart wishes you to know. And this may or may not sound strange, that many different hearts live within you, but this is my experience of my conversation with my heart over 5 years of doctoral research. And so there's many hearts that live within me, and I'm endeavouring to open a space for those many hearts to make themselves known to you in their way. So I'm inviting you to stay curious about what this might mean, and as much as you can, keep your heart and your whole body awareness open during this session today. But as this session is about the heart and the heart's way of perceiving the world, what I always do in every single session that I run is that I bring us into the heart space. So I'd really like us to bring our attention and our awareness into our heart. So if you could make yourself comfortable in the space where you find yourself on this beautiful planet on which we live, and close your eyes or rest your eyes in a soft gaze if it feels comfortable to do so. You might like to place your palm or your palms over your heart, over your chest, and just begin by breathing slowly and rhythmically. Breathing into your heart, taking that life-giving breath into your heart, and then breathing back out from your heart, back out to the world. And with every in-breath, you're receiving and taking in this amazingly complex, mysterious, beautiful world deep into your heart. The breath of the trees, the plants, the grasses, the flowers, the weathering of the rocks, all of nature, all of this beautiful world, earth, within which we are deeply, intricately embedded. The natural world from which we sprang forth in our evolution as human beings. So perhaps you can feel that you can leave your ordinary day-to-day worries or concerns. You might like to just place them in a little pile by your feet. Let the earth take the weight of those day-to-day contemporary world concerns. Just loosen, lighten the burden. And then with all that you can muster, just breathe in that life-giving breath from the natural world, taking it into your heart, and then breathing back out to the natural world, back out from your heart. And perhaps there's a recognition there as you awaken your heart space. Awaken the knowing there in your heart space that this is your truth, your connection with the natural world, with all that is you. That's your truth, that is who you are. And then the day-to-day worries and concerns and celebrations, highs, lows, all the invitations that we receive from the world, they come in and they add to that complexity. that first and foremost we are natural beings sprung forth from the earth. And just allowing yourself to be held by the earth, by your heart, as you move in this reciprocal breath. Your heart that keeps you alive, your heart that knows, that loves, that feels in living relationship with life. And just continue to breathe in and out of your heart space just for a few moments longer, just really savoring that connection with the natural world, the ground of your being. Your heart, the place that receives the calls of the world as it speaks in vibrant colour, smell, taste, deep knowing. So now, as you've just activated your heart space in conversation with the world, with the natural world, I'd like you just to very gently start to bring your attention back to the present moment, back to the now. As you become aware of the room within which you're sitting and your physical body sat on the seat beneath you. As you just bring your awareness back to the present moment. And when you feel fully back, please return to this time and space and open your eyes. And I would just say to just be now open to what claims you. So any word or phrase or image that claims you as we are moving through this session this afternoon, just be aware of what that might be and just make a note of it somewhere in your body awareness, or you might like to write it down. That the heart is very much about frequency and resonance. And so if something is staying with you or resonating with you, then that's information. That's information that your heart is endeavouring to communicate to you. And we'll speak more to this shortly. So in this session today, I'm going to share with you how I know my heart, and then offer you the opportunity to meet some of the hearts that live within you. The physical difficulties I experience with my own heart have become the seed of the heart sense approach, as my heart drew me into deep conversation and introduced me to the many different hearts that live within me. And as I've said previously, while it may sound strange to say that different hearts live within us, I'd like to ask that we stay open, and that you open yourself to the possibility that your heart has many different layers or faces that can be engaged with meaningfully as such. And Liz has talked about this in her session this morning, about the three hearts, the physical, the energetic, and the spiritual. And as a foundation for what I'm going to be presenting to you, I'm drawing on discourses including transpersonal psychology, esotericism, religious mysticism, comparative religion, and Goethean science, that specifically understands the heart as an organ of perception, that is, an organ of knowing, an organ of imaginal knowing, a place of wisdom. So how did I end up here speaking to you today, this afternoon, on this wonderful afternoon? I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world. So just to say that over 40 years, my heart has been the focal point of my life. And we know that the biological heart is central to human survival, but my heart began speaking to me over 40 years ago through physical symptoms, and many years later in audible words. And so it's become really important for me to revisit my own understanding of what the heart actually is. So all throughout my childhood into early adulthood, my life was characterized by conflict and disconnection. And in 1990, at the age of 18, I was rendered in hospital for 3 months with viral myocarditis. And as part of that experience, I had numerous cardiac arrests. I was left with a pacemaker and taking heavy doses of medication. And over the next 2 decades, I experienced debilitating arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia, all the arrhythmias you could possibly have that they have a name for. I experienced every single one of them. And over time, I just lost faith completely in my heart's ability to keep me alive. And I descended into severe depression, agoraphobia. I wouldn't leave the house, wouldn't go beyond, I lived a mile at that time from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, and I wouldn't go out of my home because pretty much every day I called an ambulance to take me into hospital. And so I lost faith in my heart and my heart's ability to keep me alive, and I just shoved myself, all my whole being, into my head, and just left my body. And it was because of that, I think, that in a moment poised between life and death, my heart reached out and spoke to me and just screamed at me, saying, this conflict is your own creation, but you have the power to change it. I had no idea what to do with that. I had no frame to put this in. What do you do when your heart speaks to you? But there was something deep within me, something that wouldn't let go. It was like a thread. And so this numinous, extraordinary experience, it led me on a long journey of discovery to make sense of what on earth had just happened to me. And I knew this thread, this thing that said that I couldn't medicalize what had happened, or to place the experience into what religious philosopher Professor Jeffrey Kripal calls a rational rereading. And what that means is where revelatory experience is subsumed into a rational framework. So it's narrowed, it loses all of its potency, it loses all of its meaning making, its deeper, expanded meaning making. So what I did is I held onto this thread, and I allowed this numinous, extraordinary experience to lead me on a long journey of discovery to make sense of what had happened. And this took over 15 years, so it didn't happen overnight. So I went through the world of self-help to alternative complementary therapies. I then ended up doing a master's at the Schumacher College in holistic science, and then onwards towards to complete a PhD. So it took a very long time to make sense of any of this. And so what I've had to do is I've had to really revisit and challenge my personal understanding of what the heart actually is. And the only way I could do this was to create the possibility through a research methodology that I needed to use to create a space for my heart to continue to speak to me. And so as I did this and used a particular methodology that I'm going to share with you, I learned that my heart is not just a physical organ. It's so much more than our contemporary understanding would have us understand. And we've talked about this today. But I think what it's important to understand is that when you don't have a framework to put an experience like this in, you have to trust that something is guiding you on. And what's happened since the time of the Enlightenment is that the focus of our attention and perception has moved from the heart to the brain. So whereas the heart used to be seen as an organ of the soul, that it used to speak, we've moved from a cardiocentric, heart-centered worldview to a craniocentric worldview. And this has been documented through cultural history and through medical history as well, that the seat of the soul is now really seen as in the brain. So the heart has nothing to do with anything, and therefore it can't speak, it's just a pump. But this has had massive repercussions in relation to how we, as a contemporary Western world, see ourselves and make sense of the world. And it's really, really important to understand this, because I found that when I started to understand this, I understood why I was disconnected, why there was so much conflict in my life, because I was living a half-life. My heart was always trying to gain my attention through physical symptoms, but I wasn't listening, and I didn't know how to. So this is my own story. I lived in a highly conflicted, fear-based world, but over the course of 15 odd years, through the guidance of my heart, learning to trust my heart, I've moved into a world of connection and to a place of a deep sense of belonging. So if you take anything away from today, I'd like you to just think about or to appreciate just how our Western world's unconscious biases towards the heart are actually framing our ability in this time right now that we're living in to connect or not with our heart's way of knowing. And so it's really important that we create spaces like we're creating today to open up the space for your hearts to speak. They've always been speaking, but for you to actually hear. And so this is why today is just so wonderful, because there's all these different ways that have already been shared that can help us to trust and to return and to know that our hearts have got us, they've got our back, and they support us every step of the way. We just have to learn to trust and listen once more. So I just wanted to say a little about the research approach that made the conversation with my heart possible over the course of my PhD. And in my searches for a supportive framework to hold my inquiry, I discovered depth psychologist Robert Romanishin and his imaginal methodology. And this was inspired by Carl Jung's understanding of and the therapeutic use of the active imagination that makes space for the unconscious dynamic playing out between the researcher and the work. So the work in my case was my heart. And this is when there's a place for conversation to happen between the work, which is my heart, and me. This is called a transference field. It's a place where conversation is made possible through the imagination. And so this methodology was supported by the foundational understanding that our hearts are organs of imaginal perception. And this has a long history in the Sufi mystic tradition. So the religious scholar Henri Corbin brought forth this understanding into the academic circles, into the academy. So Henri Corbin was influenced by 12th century Muslim scholar and mystic Ibn Arabi, and Ibn Arabi himself was drawing on Platonic teachings. So you can see that actually these ideas, these frameworks towards the world, they actually have a very long history, over 2,000 years of history. And they're also the foundations of our philosophy, of the Western philosophy. So they have a home, they have a place. It's just that we may have put our attention in a particular direction. But these are foundational ways of knowing of the Western contemporary framework. But through Arabi's work, Corbin understood the heart as the organ of imagination. So in this context, the organ of imagination, the heart, is an organ of knowledge that mediates between the material world of flesh and the transcendent world of spirit. So here we have what Liz was talking about this morning. The material heart can communicate with spirit through the framework of understanding that the heart is an organ of imaginal perception. So in this sense, Corbin helped to bring into the contemporary world, this was in the 1960s, this contemporary idea of an imaginal mode of consciousness which is able to converse with subtle transcendent realms, which for Corbin, in his framework, are deeply spiritual and infinitely real. So Corbin's work then influenced the depth psychological approaches of Carl Jung and James Hillman. So they then understood the imagination as a bridge between the conscious and unconscious realms of the psyche. And again, we talked about this a little bit today with Tim's work. So what we're saying here is that the heart is able to expand through imagination. It's a valid way of knowing. It encompasses meditative, contemplative states, dream, imagery, reverie, deep inner knowing that we may, in our contemporary Western framework, pass off as, oh, well, that's just irrational, it's not real, I can't trust it. It incorporates all the deeper ways that we would know in relationship with ourselves, our soul, the world, and the more subtle calls of the world, because the world is always speaking to us. It's just not necessarily in English in the way that I'm talking to you now. So the imagination and the heart as the organ of imaginal perception helps us to connect more deeply with the more transcendent realms in religious philosophical terms, or with our own soul, our deeper sense of self in psychological terms. And that's really important. So we actually have an organ, a heart inside of us that can speak with the world, that can open up to the spiritual, that can hear the earth speaking, and that can hear our soul speaking. And when I realize this, and that there's a framework of knowing that can help me to deepen my meaning making in relationship with the world, that was when the world completely opened for me. And so it's the heart that is this mode, this organ of perception in relationship with the world that can help us engage more deeply with this rich complexity of the world in which we are embedded and within which we live. So for Corbin and Hillman, as I say, the heart is an organ of perception. It receives the world, it responds to the world as it speaks to us through images, through symbol, through synchronicity, through dream. And it's this imaginal mode of consciousness that takes up these images through the language of imagination. And so the visionary or perceptive imagination offers possibilities for engaging with life that are not often visible, as we've said, in our ordinary everyday mode of consciousness. So for instance, on this slide, and I remember that Liz had a similar slide earlier this morning, a heart-shaped cloud. I'm often guided towards making deeper meaning in my life when I need to make a decision. And I'll very often see a heart-shaped cloud or a heart-shaped stone when my heart wishes me to guide me in a particular direction. And so I know, at that moment, I know that's my imaginal consciousness, my heart speaking to me, and I know that that's meaningful for me. And so I take it up as meaningful. And of course, it takes time to understand how your own heart communicates with you as the world unfolds around and through you. But what I'm endeavoring to shine a light on is that when engaging in conversation with the world through our hearts as organs of imaginal perception, that is, using the imagination as a valid way of knowing, it's not fantasy, it's not something we grow out of when we're 8 years old. It is a primordial way of knowing. It's what we came into the world knowing how to understand the world through. And so it's a valid part. So we open ourselves to let more of the world in. Nothing is hidden. It is we who are the instruments of perception, and it's up to us to sharpen these receptors. And this is really what we're doing today. We're sharpening these receptors. We're taking up as a possibility, as a validity, that our hearts can speak deeply to us in many, many different ways that we may not know are possible or believe that we can take up as valid. And so the imagination and the heart as its organ of perception is a facilitator for interacting with life as it unfolds in each living moment. It's the creative space which is able to hold the infinitely rich complexity and diversity of the living, breathing world. And so for James Hillman, the imagination is the authentic voice of the heart. And so that if we speak from the heart in conversation with the world, we must be speaking imaginatively. So what is it like for us to actually consider that today we are connecting with each other in the imaginal space? We are deepening our connection with each other in the imaginal realm, which is just as real, just as valid, and just as important as any other ways that we know in the world. And so it was with this understanding of the imagination and the heart in place that I was able to start to bring my heart's voice into my awareness. And so I put my heart's way of knowing and my heart first, and this was followed by rational head-based critique. So it's not a dichotomy between day-to-day modes of consciousness and the heart. It's actually both and again, this has been spoken about today. It's bringing more of the world in. So you bring your heart knowing in along with your rational head-based, mind-based way of knowing, so that your whole body is involved in making meaning in the world. And it just deepens and transforms your relationship with life because you're given the possibility to make sense of the world in a deeper way. And if I reflect on the work with my heart, I was being asked by my heart to open, to receive the world through tasting and witnessing and participating in a wider, expansive field of consciousness that was clothed in my own narrative and images, but it not only changed and transformed my own life, but I later found out had deep implications for the contemporary world in general. And just to say as well that this way of knowing is nothing new. I'm not saying anything new. It's just I'm sharing my experience with you, my journey with my heart. Our heart's story and how it's lived in the lives of cultures long preceding our own is held in the deep wisdom of our own hearts, our ancient hearts, and it guides us onwards on a moment by moment basis. For numerous ancient cultures, the heart was a place of intellect and wisdom. It was the seat of conscience and mind. It was a place associated with one's own spiritual identity. And what happened when English physician William Harvey published his findings in 1628 was that the heart started to be seen as a more physical organ. So then its place as a powerful, soulful place, it came into question because the heart started to be touched physically as well. There was a time when people said that you can't touch the heart because if you touch the heart, somebody would die. And so again, it's our perception, it's how we are and orient ourselves in the world that creates the world that we see. And what happens when we don't allow our hearts in to speak to us is that they have to then find themselves exiled in places like illness or screaming out in other ways, as it did in my own narrative. And so since the time of the Enlightenment and the dawn of modern science in the West, what's happened is heart and mind have become increasingly separated, and that's given us a lot of wonderful things. But also I think what we've forgotten is that our hearts are still speaking to us and we can still hear. And so when people generally speaking in contemporary Western society speak about the heart, it's generally spoken of in two distinct categories. One is the physical pump-like muscle hidden behind the rib cage, or in metaphorical terms, because that's the only way it can live, the heart that loves, that knows, that feels. But it's not really valid. You know, the head really is the one that's most important. But I've discovered that actually that's not the case. It's a limitation of the contemporary framing towards the heart that narrows our understanding of it. Our heart is always talking to us, and our heart is so much more than our contemporary narrative makes possible. And as I've opened up to deep conversation with my own heart, I've actually discovered 11 hearts, and there is another one that is making itself known to me at this moment in time too. So it's just a privilege for me to be undertaking this deep, deep conversation with my heart in the way that I am. So just briefly, just to say about a modern heart, drawing on the work of Corbin, James Hillman has suggested in his work that our modern culture is now bereft of an adequate psychology and philosophy of the heart. We're kind of starved of the heart's wisdom and love and everything that the heart stands for. And so what Hillman means when he says what he says is that the heart as an organ of imaginal perception responds aesthetically to the images that it receives from the world. So it's a heart that moves and feels in communion through direct experience of life itself. But if one approaches the heart through a means of literal sense perception, then we carry a kind of narrower heart in our chests. An anaesthetized heart is something that Hillman says as well. And over time, what's happened is thought lost its heart lost its thought, because we're not understanding that we can think with our hearts. We don't trust that that's something that we can do. And so Hillman then says that our heart then becomes an enemy. It's my killer, my death. We have to then rediscover it in its exile in contemporary heart diseases. And so if our thinking, feeling, imagining wise hearts have been silenced through a perceptive lens that has narrowed our perception of the heart, then how is it going to gain attention? How is it going to gain our attention? And for me, it was through cardiac illness, and it led me on this journey. So what are we missing in terms of our understanding and engagement with life through our modern perception when we don't have sufficient ways of listening to other hearts beyond the mechanical idea of the heart as pump? And that's what my whole work is about. It's about challenging those perceptions and moving beyond them very gently, very lovingly, very attentively, and just saying, come back into your heart and listen to what your heart has to say, because it's never stopped loving you and never stopped talking to you. So my heart has invited me into its world. It showed me that it's had so much to offer, and over the course of 5 years, I actually met 5 hearts. Then it changed to 6, and then it became 11. So it's been moving on during that time. And what I'd like to do now is just share with you, give you an experience of these hearts. Just can't probably do all of them today, but I'd really like to share with you at least 4 of the hearts that I've had the honour and privilege of connecting with. So I can see that there's maybe a few questions in the chat here. Is there anything I need to respond to? No, that's fine. Okay. So if everyone's okay, please could I ask you again just to rest your eyes in a soft gaze if that feels comfortable for you. You might like to place your palm or your palms over your heart again. And then just begin by breathing into your heart and back out from your heart. Breathing into your heart and breathing back out from your heart. And just taking that life-giving breath deep into your heart, breathing back out from your heart once more. And just breathing in and out at a rhythm, a pace, a depth that feels right, that feels comfortable for you. Nothing's being asked of you, nothing's being demanded of you. There is nowhere for you to be other than here in this present moment, right now. And we're going to just connect with now, as this whole day is about connection, listening, appreciating. We're going to connect with a number of hearts that I met on my journey and that I'd like to invite you to experience in your own experience with your heart. So as you breathe in and out of your heart, maybe if you're finding connection difficult, you might like to bring into your awareness, into your heart's awareness, someone or something that you have deep appreciation for, who you love deeply, who you appreciate very much. And just grow those feelings, sensations of love, connection, gratitude. Could be a person or a beloved pet or a landscape. But just really coming into that space of the heart, those beautiful benevolent heart qualities of care, appreciation, love, kindness. And the first heart that I'd like us to connect with is the physical heart. And as you breathe into your heart and breathe back out from your heart, and then maybe you bring your awareness into your physical heart, this organ, biological organ in your chest, appreciating that this heart has been beating as early as 16 days after your conception. That your heart was the first organ to form as you were a fetus in the womb, and has been beating, there is some conjecture on this, but has been beating since as early as 16 days after your conception, and has been beating with you, alongside you, for you, ever since. So your physical heart has been your traveling companion since the very beginning. And just taking a moment now just to appreciate your physical heart and all that it does for you, helping you to experience this beautiful, natural world that we live in, to experience all the ups and downs, all the challenges. This heart beats with you, for you, alongside you. And maybe as you allow yourself to appreciate this, you can feel your heart beating, perhaps. Or maybe there's a tingling in your chest, or a warmth, or nothing at all. And that's whatever you feel or are experiencing is absolutely right for you, where you are right now. So just continuing to breathe in and out of your heart and having appreciation for your beautiful physical heart that's been your traveling companion since the very beginning. And you might like to say thank you, physical heart. I appreciate you so much for all that you do, all that you help me to experience. And then just continuing to breathe into your heart and back out from your heart. And as you're maybe placing your palm over your heart, taking that focused awareness into your heart, what you're doing is you're awakening your heart as an organ of imaginal perception. Whilst this might not mean anything necessarily right now, your heart knows what that means. Your heart knows that that means that you are placing your attention in your heart and opening yourself to listen in a more expanded, deeper, more meaningful way than the literal sense perceptions of our ordinary day-to-day modes of consciousness allow. So this is where trust in the heart comes in, because this is your heart's world now. It is your heart's way of knowing. And so let your heart take you by the hand as we move into another heart that you probably know very well, but has been misunderstood through a contemporary Western framework. And this is your emotional, your feeling heart. Now this heart can sometimes feel a little bit tender, a little bit bruised. So we're going to go very carefully, very gently with this heart. And this is a heart that responds to the calls of the world. So as the world reaches out its invitation to you, So life reaches out and says, do you want to experience this? Do you want to accept this invitation or decline this invitation? And so your heart can let you know how you feel about things. What's interesting about this heart is that it's been sentimentalized. It's been subsumed into a place of subservience, that it's not valid, we can't trust it. But this heart is so much more than we've been guided to understand. This heart is powerful, and when I say powerful, I mean softly powerful. There's a gentle, soft, strong power to this heart. We need this heart to show us how we feel about things. We are experiencing beings that experience emotions. So we can experience the highs and the lows, the joys, the celebrations, and the things that bring us down. But they teach. These are emotions and feelings that can teach us. And what I've also learned is that very often feelings and emotions do not originate in the heart. Very often they can originate from different places in our body, and our heart processes them. It looks at them, and in the looking, it offers us information. So this heart is so incredibly important. It's very wise. It's not just sentimental. That's a narrow framework that's been applied to this heart. And when a narrow framework is applied to this heart, we lose the depth of meaning. So if you can just continue to breathe in and out of this heart. And whilst you may not fully know this heart through the heart's lens just yet, maybe just by hearing these words, you can deepen an appreciation for just how wise this heart is and just how it can guide you in your life, if you allow it. Because it is so much more than we've been led to understand. It's not just a metaphor, it's not just a symbol. It's incredibly important. So breathing into this heart again, appreciating your feeling, your emotional heart, and all that it can gift and offer you, knowing that there's strength in this heart, that you don't have to be a victim or a slave to feelings or emotions in this heart. This is not what this heart is. Then just opening yourself up to the possibility of this heart revealing itself to you in its fullness, in its authenticity, as you move beyond this session today. Perhaps being a little more curious about it as you move beyond this session today. And then breathing into your heart and back out from your heart as we move now to greet another heart that I met on my journey. And this heart I know as the symbolic heart. And I mentioned it on a previous slide with the heart-shaped cloud. And this heart is another really important heart. This heart lives at the liminal edges of our world as it connects with the earth, as the world and the earth speak to us in all of its complexity, not in ways that we're doing here, but in all other ways. Taste and smell and sound, deep inner knowing, intuition, dream, meditation, contemplation. This is the imaginal realm. a heart-shaped stone, a heart-shaped cloud. Maybe you have an animal totem, or when you see a feather that means something to you. This is the realm of the heart in conversation with you and the world. So this is what I know to be the symbolic heart. And it's always talking to you, always trying to gain your attention, bringing you towards deeper meaning making in your life, giving you a depth and an expansiveness to your experience as a human being living in this mystical, magical, complex, chaotic, incredible world. So perhaps as now you've greeted this heart and are appreciating this heart may speak to you more as you leave this session today. Try and make itself known to you in your life in ways, because you now are focusing your attention in your symbolic heart's direction. And your symbolic heart is excited because it knows that it can communicate with you and gain your attention. Maybe more synchronistic events that will happen, where you'll see more of your animal totem. And when it happens, say thank you. Thank you, heart, I'm listening. So breathing into your heart and back out from your heart again, appreciating your symbolic heart. And each of these hearts that we've met, your physical heart, your emotional feeling heart, your symbolic heart, or just name the other hearts that I've met on my journey. We won't have time to meet them all today, but there is the spiraling heart, a heart that Liz was speaking about this morning. That's an incredibly important heart, has deep meaning for us in our lives in the contemporary Western world now. There's the ancient heart, Gaia heart, alchemical heart, authentic heart, courageous heart, Gaia heart, and they all live within you, and they are all wanting to speak to you. And then encompassing all of these hearts that live within you is your beautiful sacred heart, this vessel that encompasses all these hearts, all the different faces of the hearts that live within you, all the different layers of wisdom that your heart can gift you. And this is the heart that contains all the qualities, again, that we've been talking about today. Openness, love, appreciation, care. This open gesturing towards the world. The heart is the perfect place to situate ourselves when we're engaging in connection with others, in relation with others, because we're halfway there. The heart's stance towards the world is one of openness, of connection, of relationship. It wants relationship. It wants to be loving and curious and kind towards another, towards the world. It transcends labels, religions, colour, gender. It sees into the heart of another and sees that we are one. And this heart is the heart that you carry inside you. And this is the heart that lives in every other being. And every being has a heart, whether it's a stone or a tree or a flower or a plant or a grass or an animal. Everything has a heart, a central point, a resonant frequency. And so perhaps you can allow this beautiful heart that lives within you and sees the world through that lens. Allow yourself to be held by this heart. Allow your heart to deepen and widen and expand around you. So you sink back into the velvety folds of this heart that loves you exactly for who you are. And sees you as a child of consciousness, of source, of the divine, of the transcendent. And as your heart sees you in that way, you see your heart in that way. And then where do you end and your heart begins? And where does your heart end and where do you begin? And in that space, we are in the space that Tim so beautifully took us into this morning. And this is all made manifest and possible through your heart. So you might now just like to float a question into your heart, into the vast, expansive landscape of your heart, a quantum space that has no end and no beginning. Heart, now that I'm reconnecting with you, what is it you'd like to say to me? And then just float that question, that intention into your heart, and know that your heart has received it, that it's listening, and your heart will gift you a response when the time is right. Could be immediately, could be later, could be tomorrow, next week, next month. Just trust that your heart has heard you and will respond. So just taking some breaths now into your heart once more, deep into your heart and back out from your heart. And if you did expand your heart out to encompass all that you are, you might like to just bring your heart back into its ordinary size, into your chest, underneath your palm. You can always return to this space whenever you wish, because this is the heart that lives within you. This is the potentiality of this co-creative, loving, unifying, transformative space. And it's in you. It's your sovereign power. And in the next few moments, we're going to return to the Zoom room. But we're going to do this quite gently and slowly, because when we're in the heart, it takes us into a slightly different mode of perception, slightly different resonant frequency. So as you continue to breathe into your heart and back out from your heart, I'd like you to start to become aware of the sounds within the room around you. And also now become aware of your physical body sat on the seat beneath you. As with every breath, you just rise and rise and rise in your awareness, just gently and slowly, back into the present moment, back into the now. And you might like to just rub your palms together. I'm just going to close my blind a little bit. I don't like shutting out the sun, but I couldn't see my screen. Just rub your palms together. You might like to just gently tap your feet against the ground as well, just to bring yourself back. You may be returning a little bit more liminally as well. You might feel a little bit softer Uh, so I have a few more slides to share, but I think what I'd like to do now is just open up for any reflections. Would anyone like to speak to the contemplation, to anything that has claimed you as part of what I've been speaking about or the exercise? Just unmute when you feel ready. Lisa.
Well, I absolutely love that. God, I just love everybody now. I had my inner balance monitor on during that, and it had been flung in my drawer a few weeks ago because I had got to level 4 and I could not get any heart coherence on level 4. I just could not do it. And I put it on for this just to sort of see how I went, and boom, straight into high coherence. So quite wonderful. That just kind of blew my mind. I loved it. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's given me things to process and digest. And I just love you all. Thank you so much.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for feeling able to share. And heartfelt, love back to you too. Gabrielle.
First of all, thank you very, very much. I really loved it all. It's wonderful. Two things I want to say. When we did the meditation and you got into the emotional heart, I was so cold all the time. And I had immediately, now my body is just like a heating machine. It's really interesting. I could really feel what it activated. That was really great. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
also thank you so much for um, like telling about the origin of science, which was already always a spiritual science, and the heart was at the center of that science, because it's close to my heart as well, with Plato and Aristotle. And I think it's so important that we
Yes.
talk about it, because now what we consider as research and science, it's kind of completely disconnected from its origins. And yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle. I think it's really important that we remember that, nothing that we're really speaking about is new, but what we're endeavoring to do is to draw attention back to our wise, loving, knowing hearts. And this is the way that my heart gifted me during my research. So I share that with others now. But really, I think we're just in this beautiful phase of reorienting our perception again, and actually saying, I've said this a lot with my heart, so it's okay for me to be in the world like this, to think about the world this way. And my heart said to me, yes, Louise, this is your foundational way that you know anything in the world. And so it's really important that we acknowledge our foundations. Nothing we're sharing is anything new, but there may be contemporary frameworks that can help us to move more rapidly, back to that heart connection again, because let's face it, we need it in the world that we're living in right now. Peter.
Hi, Louise. Yeah, thank you. That was very, very powerful. I just struck by, as you probably remember, this morning we had internet problems, and I could feel my sense of stress rising exponentially, my heart closing at the same rate. So the question is, first of all, which of your hearts would you recommend for recognizing that we've closed? And secondly, what do we do about it when that happens?
Which of the hearts? I would say that it's the sacred vessel. It's the one that encompasses all of them. And that if you're endeavoring to move into connection with technology, I would speak with the symbolic heart. Yeah. Okay. But I think, it's very much, my heart says to me, Louise, energy flows where attention goes. So it's like, if we're worried about something happening, then probably it will happen. So it seems counterintuitive, really, Peter, doesn't it? You're worried about your internet connection, and I appreciate that. But actually, given that we're in a relationship, so everything that we do is relational. that actually sending out loving thoughts to the internet, to your, your BT hub, to the wiring, and to just say, I have every faith that you are going to hold up. And I'm going to hand over that responsibility to you, because that's your job. That's what you do. I can't do that, because, that's not me. I'm a human being. And so I would trust the sacred vessel of the heart to hold that.
Yeah. I mean, I've found through experience that it's the knowing. It's something knowing.
Yeah,
And
it is knowing.
Can't say where it comes from, but
it takes time. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
As I tried to say on my journey, I've had to condense my journey into an hour and a half long session with a contemplative exercise in it. But this has been 15 years of me actually having no faith whatsoever in my heart, and not even, it got to the point where I didn't even want to feel it beating, because I just could not stand it. It made me feel sick. So this has been a very long journey of me practicing this kind of contemplative exercise daily, sometimes twice a day. So, again, it's just, even if you can just move into your heart, in the morning when you get up, I say this to my heart sense groups, the first thing you do, when you're opening your eyes, move straight into your heart, whether that's a breath or palm over your heart, just to activate your heart center and say, heart, I am committed to hearing you today, to listening to your guidance today. And then last thing at night, end your day in your heart. And it's a practice. So I guess what I'm saying, Peter, is it takes time to become a habit. It's practice, and it's also a commitment.
And guess which is the bit I forget, the practice.
The practice, yeah.
Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Louise, can I just ask? I'm trying to find how you raise your hand. I can't find how to do that. But anyway, I just want to know how your health is now, after learning how to communicate and listen to that wise voice that was speaking to you. What happened to your health from that point onwards?
Well, my health has utterly transformed. It wasn't an expectation that would happen, but I have been arrhythmia free for 13 years. I have reduced my medication now to a very tiny amount, once every other day. I last went to have an echocardiogram. It was about 3 or 4 years ago now. And the nurse said to me, Louise, I have no idea what you've been doing, but your left ventricle functionality has improved by about 10%. So I told her what I'd been doing. And my, every single relationship in my life before I started doing this, there was just conflict everywhere. I was disconnected from the whole world. I feared the world, that I thought the world hated me. Absolutely every single part of my life has transformed, health-wise, relationship-wise. I mean, for me, the heart is like a place of miracles. Mm-hmm. It really is.
I'm so glad you've told us that, because that just illustrates the power, doesn't it, of when you work with your heart and listen to your heart, the transformation that's possible.
Yes.
It's amazing. Thank you.
And I have damage, I have scar tissue. So, but I'm talking every single day to my heart, and we are so much more than our physical selves. Yeah. I can see Caroline's got her hand up. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Louise. I've come into this sort of fairly new to the heart connection side. So for me, this has been quite a profound experience. I hadn't even contemplated thinking about the heart. I had many hearts to listen to, and I've been really struggling with trying to connect to my heart, especially using my heart math app, and I feel quite shaky at the moment, because it's just been quite an emotional experience for me, especially when we went into from the physical heart into the second part, because that really spoke to me quite strongly as to oh, now I think I understand why I've had that disconnect. You know, because as you said, you almost know that there's something missing, and you know you've not been listening. That there is that knowing, and all of a sudden it is just, you know, like we've been talking about awakenings, it's just like that, oh blimey, you know, sort of, oh heavens above. And I can't remember what you said the second part, second heart was called, but that one's
the emotional feeling heart.
yeah. You could probably hear him.
I can.
That one's really spoken to me quite strongly. I do feel really emotional.
Oh, bless you.
And so for this whole journey, you know, and sort of when you said what's the voice, it is trust the journey.
Yes.
Trust the journey.
Beautiful.
And yes, it's connecting with those parts of my heart that I've blocked off because of, like you, things that have happened in my life. So thank you so much. And thank you for everybody so far, because honestly, I am so glad I've come today.
Thank you.
So thank you. So this part of my heart is just going.
I would say to you, just go slowly and carefully now. You know, just if all gets too much, just go back to your heart, go back to the breath, you know, that everyone's talked about today. And just say to your heart, you know, because it can be quite a big awakening when this happens. And you say to your heart, I am now listening. Please only give me what I can deal with and cope with within my ordinary day-to-day mode of consciousness. Because your heart will get so excited that it will be like, oh my goodness me, she's listening now. And, you know, it wants to obviously speak and you're listening, but you need to also, and your heart is great because that's where the dialogue starts to happen. And you can say, I'm feeling really shaky, heart. Can you give me some strength and some courage just to move through this? And can you just go a little bit slower with what you're gifting me? And that's where the conversation starts.
Thank you. Great guidance. Thank you.
So I just have a few more slides to share before I end for today, and then we can, if we do have time, then we can maybe open to a few more questions. But just to really reiterate that in every part of my life now, so this is my life, personal and professional. It's my heart's voice and my heart's wisdom and knowledge that's my focus and driving force. So the voice of my heart takes precedence. And so once my heart has offered imagery or messages, I follow what's been gifted to me with an in-depth review of source material. So that would mean passing what I've learnt from my heart through meditation, dream, feelings, deep knowings, to my discursive intellect, which I see as situated in my brain, in my head. And I follow that by analysis. So what's happening in that context is my heart and my mind are working together. But what is happening is that my heart's voice and my mind, they're all given equal validity, priority, and value. And this is critical because we're living in a world where there's so much imbalance between ways that we know our place in the world as human beings. And we're told you can't trust your heart because it's sentimental. And hopefully what I've shown through the slides today and through the contemplation is that is not the case. It could not be further from the truth, because my whole life as a result of this process and my heart's guidance has transformed. And I've brought previously conflicted areas of my life together. My health has transformed. My relationship with others has transformed. So this is deep, meaning-making, transformative things that we're talking about, processes that we're talking about. And I'd like to just leave you with two questions if you're still unsure. The first is, what might the implications of coming to see and know the heart in such a different way? What might the implications be? And what might you lose if you don't open up to this expanded way of coming into relationship with your heart? And what could you gain if you do? So there's kind of three questions there, really. What are the implications of coming to see and know the heart in such a different way? What could you lose if you don't? And what could you gain if you do? And I'm now sitting here, years on from all the cardiac issues that I've had since the age of about 8, knowing that if I'd have turned my attention away anymore, that I probably wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be here sharing this with you today. So I've gained the world. And it's not, that's not an explosive statement. It's actually true in every single part of my being. So just to say a little bit about heart sense, and just some of the foundational learning from my heart, which has been incredibly important, and I've tried to include it as much as I could in this session today, is that my heart has helped me to discover many lost hearts that are hidden in our past, hidden behind a contemporary framework that only allows us to know our heart in a very narrow way, in a medicalized way. That's not to say that's wrong, but we need to bring in these other voices. And so when we don't bring in these other voices, we're dismissing a massive part of our heart's conversation with us. And if we open to the possibility that there is different ways of engaging with our heart through direct conversation, we can move into other hearts that want to guide us and speak to us, that we've had the opportunity to connect with today. And so people have said this afternoon, that we start to then learn to trust our hearts. By engaging with these hearts, we open up the possibility for transformation. So transformation isn't a given. It's not necessarily that's what's going to happen, but we open ourselves to the possibility of transformation taking place through this alchemical space of the heart. But when we narrow and say, oh no, we can't think of the heart in that way, we've lost the possibility in its entirety. So we can't even go there. And so for me, that's the work of heart sense, is opening up those possibilities in whatever way makes sense for you, as you're a unique person in the world in your own unique way with your own heart, and your heart will speak to you in your own way. So for me, when I work with my heart sense group, each heart is a portal. Each of the hearts I've shared with you today is a portal, but it offers you the ability then to go through that portal into the door, into the landscape of that heart, and have your own conversation, helping you to deepen your relationship with your heart and yourself and the world, because your conversation will be different to the one that I have, but it's just a portal, it's a door. So I've been able to look into the world beyond outward appearances, create deeper meaning through this deeper sense of connection and the deep language of my heart, sinking into my heart, asking what my heart wants me to know every day, and it has utterly transformed my world. So basically now what I'm doing is using heart sense. So the approach I've taken you through, and its short version is called heart sense, and it's a way of exploring the relationality with our hearts and ourselves and the world, and how can we be in the world in a wiser, I suppose, way, in a more effective way that helps us to bring the best out of another being and the best out of ourselves. So you might like to just leave this session with another question, perhaps take this into your day with you tomorrow. Heart, when you wake up in the morning, heart, what do you want me to know? Heart, what do you want to teach me? So I'd just like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to your hearts for listening, for being here, for opening your hearts today. I can be reached at heartsenseresearch.co.uk. My introduction to Heart Sense, which is a 6-week online journey, starts on the 12th of February next year, so next February. And there is a little offer, a little discount offer, so you can just pop in the coupon code return to heart at the checkout, and that'll give you a little discount offer off the course if you feel compelled to move into the heart sense approach. But whatever it is that you do, you're here, you're reconnecting, and you're listening, which is all that our heart and the universal heart wants at this time in our collective human evolution. So from my heart to yours, thank you so much. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Louise.
I think we've got
That
about
was
10 minutes.
absolutely wonderful and so important. This information is so valuable. Just imagine if everyone in the world realized that they could have conversations with their heart, that there was so much wisdom there and so much guidance. Just imagine how different our world would be if more people realized that.